that is like, hey, I'll give you $1 million by the end of this year. This is like first 3 months, okay?
That's Alex, the founder of Redpanda. They've raised $163 million. As a former founder who struggled to hit product market fit, I was envious of the speed that they went from 0 to 60, but they did so many things right.
Emacs and GCC on a Lenovo P50 on a Miami apartment. I was just writing the thing that I wish I had as an engineer. And so I started writing blog posts about it. In my mind, I was like, I'm not sure if this is going to work out, but whatever, I'm going to write the code. This is super fun. And then I open sourced an RPC framework that I started getting a bunch of traction. There's like an Italian database that adopted it internally. There's a couple of governments that adopted this open source project. It was just a communication framework. And so once I wrote this storage engine, frankly, it took off on its own.
Although they had this rapid rise of success, it's not always been easy with Alex, and he was very vulnerable about sharing just the challenges of being a solo founder. It's an incredible episode. Enjoy it. Boom. We're on a mission to help founders hit product market fit faster. We do this by interviewing founders that have been there. I'm your host, Adam O'Donnell. This podcast is put together by Zendesk for startups. We offer 6 months free of Zendesk customer support suite for qualified product-oriented companies. Alex, welcome to Sit Down Startup Founder Podcast. Super excited to have you here. Can you tell us first about Redpanda, just like what you do and the size of the company?
Yeah. Redpanda is a Kafka replacement for mission critical systems. So anyone that is running a Kafka workload, you should call me or you should join my Slack. We'd love to have a conversation with you. The size of the company right now, we are in about 15 countries or so. We're almost 200 people right now, spread worldwide. We have to cover all of the, follow the sun support for some of our Fortune 2000 customers. Customers that we could talk about that are on our website, Akamai and Vodafone and StoneX and some of the largest financial organizations, largest banks, largest car companies. So we've been just super fortunate to get to partner with the largest enterprises.
That's amazing. How many employees do you have and how much money have you raised?
We've raised $163 million to date. We just raised an $100 million round led by Lightspeed and Google Ventures a couple of months ago. So just super jazzed. I think the reason for that was largely that we just, we tend to win. I think when given the opportunity to have an honest conversation with the engineer from a technical perspective. And so that's really what led the sort of, the confidence in our existing board members to put another $100 million. And we are, I think, 175 people.
This is amazing, Alex. Thank you for congrats on that. And I know so many founders, they see the TechCrunch article and they're 100, just seeing you go on Crunchbase, see how much money you've raised and some of the best VCs in the world. But if you could take us into some lower moments that you've had, I think it just helps founders know that it's not all just the realities of what it's like to build a company like Redpanda. Maybe there's a specific story where you were concerned about the company even continuing.
I am a solo founder and it's really lonely. And so, there's just been numerous moments that have been hard. An example is when the person that raised you when you were a child, gets put into palliative care and you just kind of have to still show up on Monday and perform, because that's the job. So, or when you're, I think when you lose a kid in a late stage pregnancy with your partner, there's a lot of, I think, personal problems that as a CEO, you just kind of have to continue to perform. I think in many ways it is the job. It is why I'm here, and I take it super seriously that the people that I have the privilege to partner with every day, I've made a commitment to them that I will do whatever it is in my power to make them successful. But to a large extent, I think when you have a lot of the ups and downs of the business, sort of when the waves combine on the ups and downs, you kind of get this huge amplitude of both spikes and sometimes is sad but it's never easy. I think even for us, which we've had this fabulous growth, almost textbook growth, relative for the last 2.5 years that we decided to sell the product. I think at a personal level, for those that are building companies, it's always hard. And those are probably the lowest moments for me. It's just sort of, gosh, it's like when the curve, if you think of a sine wave or whatever, right? It's just like when the low points of the company also coincide with like really low points in your life, where you just kind of have to take a break, especially when you have like meaningful impacts, like your mom is dying, or you lose. Those have been really hard moments. And you still have to show up to the next meeting with the CIO of a Fortune 5,000 and, be energized and, tell them how you're going to help them save money or reduce complexity or whatever it is that you're trying to help them with, back to back 30 minutes. And then the following meeting is trying to recruit a principal engineer, right? And so it's like, it's like psychotic roller coaster at your lows, where it just like experience, I think, the full spectrum of sadness and happiness, but largely you can't show it.
Wow. Thank you so much for being real. There's a movement that's happening where founders are talking about these parts of things at a more public level. And I'm just so thankful that you're leading the way on that, because there's so many people, everyone has these things. Every single founder, I'd be like, for like the past 100 years, have these kind of challenges, but they just don't talk about it because they don't feel like safe doing it. But every single person does. So I'm curious, what did you do in those moments? Like when you're a solo founder, you don't even have another founder to lean on. Where are you going to kind of keep your sanity in that, like going through like the loss of a loved one, like you said?
I don't have a great answer, to be honest. I think that for me is I would typically go on a bicycle ride. Is kind of how I reset myself, and the reason for that is my wife doesn't think it's fun, but for me, it's really relaxing to go uphill on a bicycle because it's so exhausting. The only thing you can focus on is your breath and trying to pedal uphill. And there's like nothing physically that you could do anymore because you're just like so tired, so physically tired, so drenched in sweat, and it's so hot. And still, if you're going up Mount Tam or whatever on the back of Mount Tam, it's just so tiring that that's kind of how I reset myself. And I think after just breathing through it or going on a bike ride, it's super helpful. It's kind of how I center myself. And then in the grander scheme of things, my life is great. And so it's just sort of getting perspective, taking a step back, and and so those are the main things. And then I do have a bunch of tactical advisors, people that have taken company public, and you're like, hey, I need to take a moment. Like, I don't need you to solve my personal problem, but do you have advice of how to deal with sort of like this really complicated matrix of decisions that I have to take in the next few days? And so leaning on your advisors for tactical work to just get through that week, while you kind of like, are dealing with your own life, it's been a helpful combination. But it's not great. I think that in general, people need to have a larger community, and it's just so busy that sometimes you leave the urgent for the important. And I think that a lot of CEOs go through that.
That's amazing. But having that outlet, even if it's a short-term thing like the bike ride, to give you that perspective, super helpful. And then having a panel of people to like help with, who's been there on that journey ahead of you, that you have their phone call. I'm sure you're just texting them, calling them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super lucky in that regard too. Actually, I would say that both my board members, Arif from Lightspeed and Dave Muni at TV, they've been great at connecting me with other phenomenal humans from their best successes and their best investments, and I feel really lucky about that in many ways, because when things hit the fan, they don't know, because they haven't taken a company public, but I get to lean into the people that they've introduced me to for just like difficult tactical things, and so the point is that when you hit some lows, it's helpful to offload some tactical decision making to people that are, experts. I have done this 1,000 times, and they're obviously not going to solve your problems, but they're going to give you a perspective. And, It's like when, you know, when you're a kid, I have a 2-year-old boy. And the first time that hit his head, it's like the world melted and he panicked and he was crying for 30 minutes because that is the hardest thing that he's ever seen. And so similarly, I think some of the hardships that we've gone through at companies, to people that have taken a company public, they're like, this is just the first time that you fell in your head. And so having that context, you're like, okay, I need to get over myself, you know, like, and that just for me, for my personality, that tends to work well. You know, it's like, here's a cup of coffee, or a cup of tea, and then I just kind of implement it and I go on. But having access to someone that has that perspective has been really helpful.
Oh, I love that. Is the perfect example. We're definitely using that. Thank you. So this, yeah, just getting that big perspective. I think for the next couple of minutes, I really would love to know how you spend your time at each of the different stages of the company. So maybe like pre-seed, seed, series A, how you spent your time at those different stages, and maybe how you spend it now as a way for us to know where founders should be spending their time, what they should be prioritizing.
The first thing that I got on my seed was a mentor, someone that was a Series C CEO back then who raised a lot more money. That was probably the most meaningful thing that I did early on, because the main lesson learned is that I should always focus on the thing that adds the most value to the company. Full stop. The job of the CEO is, how do you spend your time and energy on the things that are multiplicative efforts for the outcome of the company, right? So in the seed stage, there was nothing. We came to the world with an idea that we could do better than the state of the art, that we can make Kafka easy to use and we could make it fast and we can make it simple, and developers shouldn't worry about the whack-a-mole of operationalizing this distributed system. And so the most important thing that I did in the first 8 months was code. When Arif invested and he's like, hey, we should meet, I was like, can we meet in 8 months? Because I'm busy writing code. And it's like, okay, great. And so we met 8 months later. There was nothing. I was like, what are we going to talk about? I need to finish the thing so that we can go and sell it. And then later on, my focus right after that, when we released the code source available, was how do I get this product in production, deployed in production? That was the thing that mattered the most to me. It wasn't downloads. It wasn't any sort of usage. I was like, if people can depend on my software for mission critical systems, then we have product market fit. That's how I thought about it. And so that was the transition between the seed and the A. And then at the same time, we made the company source available. And so I spent a ton of the time really either doing whatever it meant. It meant, you know, on Saturdays, I didn't have a kid back then. It meant writing code, and you know, and other times probably meant recruiting. And like my time spent recruiting just kind of went through the roof, and it sort of started to dominate my time for a really long time. It later meant, you know, code reviewing and releasing this and studying all of the open source licensings and source available licensing, so that I would understand the impact of choosing a license for the product that I was building, so that I would be able to pay the salary of the seller that would join the company. And I would have to think about the market structure. It's like, okay, what is the pre-sales engineering to seller ratio? How does this help us build a massively successful company? How do we protect against the hyperclouds from taking the product, and so on? And so that's where I spend my time on the Series A, is really on production workloads. Like, how do I get this? And then it turns out people started paying us. So those were the first 2 years. And then over the last 2.5 years, we are a 4.5-year-old company. Over the last 2.5 years, we've been trying to sell. And so the first year of selling is developing, frankly, making up pricing, understanding what your competitors do, trying to get, you know, big brands to sign on to your product. And for us, it was kind of this, this binary thing where we went from zero to the hardest Kafka workloads in the world. And so we went from zero to Fortune 2000 using us in production, you know, for like, you know, mission critical things and government contractors for things that make it to outer space and back. And they had a Redpanda product embedded in it. And then all of a sudden in Redpanda, it's actually in outer space and on Earth, and you know, all of this insane deployment, doing, you know, tens of gigabytes per second, like some of the largest workloads of Kafka. That was our first year. And so the first year I was surviving, like monkey patching, fixing all of the things and trying to grow the company. We started to grow revenue, right? Making sure that we weren't losing any customers. That was like the third year. Then last year was really about, trying to work into a sales model that is like more predictable, that we can start to scale. And I think that's probably where I spent a ton of my time. I'm still doing product vision, but I stopped coding, right? I still do code reviews because it's like I have to be able to come into a conversation with the chief architect and represent the product well, like, technically sound. And so I read that. And then, so in the fourth year, really, it's like spending time more with CIOs, trying to affect business impact, like organization-wide. And so we have some of the largest banks in the world. And when you start selling into these companies, like you'll understand that a procurement cycle is 12 months or 9 to 12 months. And then it's just for a land deal. And it's like, how do I empower other businesses? You start to focus on the business impacts at like massive organizational levels. So that's the fourth year. We'll see what next year brings. I don't know. I think the job as a CEO, you're, incompetent at a bunch of jobs until you find someone who's like super competent at those jobs, whether it's marketing or, or sales or solutions engineering or this or that. But really your job, I think, is how I started this, rant almost, is I have to do the things that add the highest impact for the company and have multiplicative value.
That was amazing. Thank you for pulling us through that journey. I was on the edge of my seat. I know the founders that are listening are going to love it. One of the last questions is around conviction that you were building the right thing before you had a lot of customer input. Because it sounded like you spent a long time building. And I'm just curious, like, I didn't hear how much you were spending time with a customer before. Like, did you just know it so well that you didn't have to? So
Redpanda started out of my apartment in Miami. Before I moved to San Francisco, I left Akamai. And one of the liberating things of being an engineer, it's you don't have to ask for permission. You open up your laptop and you write the code, right? So it's like Emacs and GCC on a Lenovo P50 on a Miami apartment. I was just writing the thing that I wish I had as an engineer. And so I started writing blog posts about it. And in my mind, I was like, I'm not sure if this is going to work out, but whatever. I'm going to write the code. This is super fun. And then I open sourced an RPC framework that I started getting a bunch of traction. There's like an Italian database that adopted it internally. There's a couple of governments that adopted this open source project. It was just a communication framework. And so once I wrote the storage engine, frankly, it took off on its own. Like, we had 5 Fortune 1000 companies call me and it's like, I want to use the product. I was like, I haven't even released it. This doesn't work. And then I had a company that, I had sold to before, that is like, hey, I'll give you $1 million by the end of this year. This is like first 3 months. Okay. I just started the project. If I can deploy this to like, whatever, some little large network of gaming consoles by the end of this year. And I was like, it's probably impossible for me to develop a full distributed storage engine that competes with another one in 12 months, but I'll try. And so that was just the conviction. And then a really large telecommunication company from Europe is like, hey, can we deploy this at the edge and so on? And then the largest electric car company started adopting this and so on. And so it was like, it really took off on its own, but I really built the thing I wish I had first. Once we started onboarding that kind of use case, I thought, okay, this looks like a real company. And then I moved to San Francisco. And here we are 4.5 years later. So for me, it's been, I don't know, maybe just trying to hold on for dear life, making sure that the rocket ship doesn't escape.
That is amazing. And just for the non-developers out there, because you were giving it out freely in the beginning, right? So what did that, how did you even let that be known? What were the channels that you were using?
So we posted the code on GitHub. We had a build that was available, so people could install it on any Linux server via their local package manager like apt-get install or rpm install if you're using any of the Red Hat distributions. And so something that we really focused on was the developer experience. It's like, how do I get this to be the easiest possible thing to install in the world? And I type my developer. We actually call it 60 seconds time to wow. So I'll time it. Actually, for Kubernetes, all my products, I'll take out my cell phone. And for those of you that are listening that can't see me, I'm like looking at the clock app. I open up the stopwatch and I hit start. And I type the commands on my terminal. And if it doesn't work in 60 seconds, like that is the usage study. And like, that person probably wouldn't get a bonus. Like it is meaningful to me that it works on clock time on what we call the 0 to wow experience, right? And to me, a developer has to be wowed in the first 60 seconds. And we do that for Kubernetes. I can tell you is 1 minute and 30 seconds. And frankly, it should be like it should be like 58 seconds. That's what we're targeting. But today you can get a production version of Redpanda on an EKS or a GKE cluster in 1 minute and 30 seconds flat. With like I've personally deployed this for my upcoming cloud products that we haven't launched. I have, times in like, the hundreds of milliseconds for particular actions that are the hot path. And so that has just been the maniacal focus early on. And so in the beginning, it was Docker, and then it sort of continued to evolve. But the principle remained the same. It's like, what is the time to wow a developer on their laptop that, or like hands on keyboard? That has been the metric that we've obsessed on.
Alex, this is amazing. Unfortunately, we have to end, but maybe there's another one in the future. Thank you so much. What's the best way, if I'm a founder and I have an authentic outreach to you, is it LinkedIn or Twitter direct messages, if there's like even a chance?
Twitter is easiest, but I'm also active on LinkedIn. Both would be fine. Twitter is @emacs_erno, which stands for the largest error in the Linux kernel, which is it's just kind of a fun factoid. Reach out. Super easy. DMs are open, so feel free to reach out.
Thank you for listening. If you want to learn more about Zendesk for startups, check out our website, zendesk.com/startups. Also, we're always looking to improve, so don't hesitate to email me with any feedback on how we can ask better questions, guests to target, or anything else so we can do to better help you as a founder. My email is adam.o'donnell@zendesk.com.